of the United States can openly talk about God,
Right.
and no one goes, "What is God? What are you saying?"
They mocked, they laughed, they dared to spit in the face of what millions call holy. And for a moment, the world cheered them on. Concert halls shook with applause, cameras flashed with adoration, and the spotlight made them feel untouchable. But the higher they rose, the faster they fell. Behind the headlines of fame and power lies a darker truth. No one who mocks God escapes unscathed. The stage that once crowned them with glory became the place of their humiliation. The wealth they flaunted turned to ashes. Their voices, once lifted in pride, were silenced by sickness, scandal, or sudden death. These are not just stories of celebrities and leaders, they're warnings. 16 people who thought they were bigger than faith, greater than truth, stronger than God, and each one paid a price that should make every soul tremble. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is more than history. It is prophecy written in the wreckage of their lives. And once you see how their downfall unfolded, you'll never look at arrogance the same way again. Number 1. Sinéad O'Connor. She was the voice of Ireland, a haunting sound that captured the world. But on October 3, 1992, live on American television, Sinéad tore up a picture of Pope John Paul II and shouted, "Fight the real enemy." That single act turned her from star to outcast. Doors slammed, crowds booed, and the industry she once ruled abandoned her. Addiction, mental torment, and the suicide of her beloved son followed. In 2023, she died alone in her London apartment, a life shattered by rebellion. Her story is more than tragedy. It is a warning that mocking the sacred leaves scars no fame can hide. But if her fate shook the world, the next one will chill your soul. Number 2. Tool, the band. Rising from Los Angeles, Tool was known not just for music, but for mocking faith with grotesque imagery and occult symbols. Their song Prison Sex shocked so deeply it was banned by MTV. Fame grew, but so did chaos, lawsuits, betrayals, health collapse, and fans turning against them. By 2024, their own followers cursed them at concerts, calling them deceivers. Once idols, they became objects of scorn. Every step upward seemed met with a fall, as if an unseen hand dragged them down. And if a whole band could be broken, wait until you see what happened to one man who thought even death itself could be mocked. Number 3. Ed Gein. In the quiet farmlands of Wisconsin, Ed Gein grew up under the crushing sermons of a fanatically religious mother. But when she died, something inside him snapped. Instead of honoring the faith she preached, Ed mocked it in the most horrifying way. He dug up corpses, turned their flesh into furniture, and even wore their skin as a mask. His home was a grotesque parody of creation. Holy pictures hung beside chairs made of human remains. In 1957, his crimes were revealed, and the world recoiled. He was locked away, broken, diseased, and forgotten. Even his grave was desecrated, leaving him nameless in death. His fate stood as a terrifying reminder. When you desecrate what is sacred, even your memory is cursed. But as chilling as his story is, the next one proves arrogance doesn't only haunt the poor and the forgotten. Number 4. Hunter Biden. Born into power as the son of a future president, Hunter Biden had every chance to be a symbol of integrity. Instead, he chose a path of rebellion. He mocked faith, scoffed at morality, and lived as if consequence didn't exist. Vodka by the liter, crack cocaine, and public affairs, even with his late brother's widow, became headlines. But the higher he climbed, the harder he fell. Convictions, lawsuits, financial ruin, and family shame crushed his name. Once shielded by his father's influence, he was left exposed, debt-ridden, and abandoned. Even his personal tragedies, losing his brother and his home to fire, became part of a spiral that looked more like judgment than misfortune. His life still unfolds, but each chapter screams the same truth. Pride may last a night, but judgment always comes by morning. And if scandal followed him, what came for the next man shook an entire nation. Number 5. Jean-Claude Baby Doc de Villiers. He sat on a throne in Haiti, calling himself president for life. But behind the title, Jean-Claude de Villiers was no savior. He closed churches, mocked priests, and twisted voodoo to keep his people in fear. While children starved in the streets, he feasted on banquets inside his palace. He thought no hand could touch him. But in 1986, the people rose. Fleeing into exile, Baby Doc carried stolen riches, yet even gold could not shield him from the weight of justice. Years later, stripped of wealth, suffering from heart disease and diabetes, he died in shame. The man who exalted himself above God was remembered not as a king, but as a tyrant whose arrogance dragged a nation through blood. His downfall teaches us, when rulers play God, their empires crumble like sand. But if his fall brought judgment to a nation, the next story shows how mockery can turn laughter into death.
Number 6. Chris Farley. He made the world laugh, yet behind the humor was a man at war with himself. Raised Catholic, Chris Farley once knew the call of humility, but fame pulled him toward chaos. On Saturday Night Live, his sketches mocked restraint. His life off stage mocked his own body. Cocaine, heroin, alcohol. He treated addiction like a badge of honor, joking about it as if daring God to act. But the laughter faded. He collapsed at parties, was fired from shows, and wandered in loneliness. By 1997, his body finally gave in. At only 33, the same age as his idol John Belushi, Chris was found dead from a lethal cocktail of drugs. The crowds mourned, but the message was clear. Pride and excess promised joy, but delivered death. And if comedy can end in a coffin, the next tale shows that even stories sold as romance can become a curse. Number 7. E.L. James. She wasn't a rock star or a dictator. She was a writer. Yet through her 50 Shades of Grey series, E.L. James twisted intimacy into spectacle, turning love into lust and marriage into mockery. Millions bought her books, turning her into a cultural queen. But fame built on sin doesn't last. Critics tore her apart, calling her a corrupter of youth and a thief of ideas. Plagiarism accusations haunted her every step, and her later works collapsed under ridicule. What once crowned her became a chain of scorn. She had money, but little respect. Her name, once whispered in excitement, was spat with disdain. She faded into isolation, remembered not for art, but for glamorizing bondage and mocking God's design for love. Her tale proves that when stories replace Christ with Christian Grey, the ending is always humiliation. But while she mocked love, the next figure mocked God himself and claimed to speak in his place. Number 8. Esther Hicks. She stood on stages, claiming to channel beings she called Abraham. Her message was bold: forget Jesus, you are your own creator. Crowds cheered, wallets opened, and millions clung to her law of attraction. But the universe, she said, bowed to her, turned against her. Lawsuits tore her apart, colleagues abandoned her, and even the creators of The Secret cut her out. Once a prophet of positivity, she became a target of scorn, labeled a fraud and manipulator. Her health declined, her influence crumbled, and her name was whispered not with awe, but with suspicion. The woman who mocked the cross ended trapped in paranoia, a shadow of the guru she once pretended to be. Her fall is a parable. When you replace the gospel with your own voice, silence will be your reward. And if her end was disgrace, the next story reveals how arrogance can haunt even Hollywood's brightest stars. Number 9. Benedict Cumberbatch. He was hailed as one of Britain's greatest actors, dazzling the world as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Strange. But while his fame rose, Benedict Cumberbatch turned his back on the faith of his homeland. He praised Buddhism, mocked Christianity, and exalted his own spiritual journey above the cross. On talk shows, he spoke with pride, dismissing humility and sacrifice as relics of a past age. The applause was loud, but so was the silence of heaven. In 2005, he was kidnapped in South Africa, bound and held at gunpoint. In that moment of terror, his philosophies gave no comfort. Though freed, the trauma never left him. Anxieties, scandals, and public backlash followed. His private life was marked by restlessness, broken ties, and the haunting reminder that no amount of talent or wealth can silence the truth. Our story warns us, you can mock faith in words, but you cannot outrun the fear that follows. But if one man's pride brought him to terror, the next life shows how arrogance can unravel even the world's most celebrated star. Number 10. Leonardo DiCaprio. From Titanic to The Wolf of Wall Street, Leonardo DiCaprio built an empire of fame. But behind the success was a man who mocked humility and exalted himself as the savior of the planet. Proudly agnostic, he scoffed at faith, while his life overflowed with excess. Private jets, endless parties, and relationships with women half his age marked him as untouchable. Yet his hypocrisy was exposed. The man who preached climate change was caught partying with the world's biggest polluters. Lawsuits, scandals, and betrayals began to shadow him. Beneath the wealth was emptiness, a restless heart, failed romances, and brushes with death that reminded him he was not invincible. The idol the world adored became a symbol of contradiction. And if fame could not protect him, what happened to the next woman proves beauty itself can't shield against the judgment that follows mocking God.
Number 11. Marilyn Monroe. She was the golden face of Hollywood, the very image of beauty and desire. Men worshipped her, women envied her, and the world adored her. But when evangelist Billy Graham once tried to share Christ with her in the early 1960s, Marilyn's response was chilling. "I don't need your Jesus." Those words, dismissing the very one who offers eternal life, became her legacy as much as her films. Only weeks later, she was found dead in her home at just 36 years old. Official reports called it an overdose, but millions whispered it was judgment. The woman who embodied glamour died alone, broken, and empty, her fame unable to protect her from despair. Marilyn's story remains a warning. Beauty fades, glory vanishes, but mocking God leaves a mark that even Hollywood lights cannot erase. And if her death shocked the world, the next man's words would echo even louder, and his end would prove no safer. Number 12. John Lennon. In 1966, standing at the height of Beatlemania, John Lennon made a statement that would follow him to the grave. The Beatles are more popular than Jesus. It was said with arrogance, dismissing the sacred for the sake of fame. Christian communities across the world erupted in outrage, burning records and denouncing the band. But Lennon seemed unmoved, reveling in the rebellion.
Yet divine justice does not forget. On December 8, 1980, as he walked home to his New York apartment, Lenin was gunned down by a fan. The world was stunned. Millions mourned. But Christians remembered his words and saw the prophecy fulfilled. To mock Christ is to invite destruction. Lenin's voice, once cheered in stadiums, was silenced in an instant. His fate remains one of history's starkest warnings, that no matter how loud the music, no one sings louder than judgment. And if words can seal a man's end, the next figure proved that mocking faith with philosophy only leads to bitter irony. Number 13. Voltaire. The French philosopher Voltaire was a brilliant man, revered for his wit and intellect, but he had little regard for the sacred. He publicly mocked Christianity, declaring that within 100 years the Bible would be forgotten. He believed that reason and humanism would eclipse faith, and for a time his words were celebrated. But as his life ended in 1778, death came for him unceremoniously. Voltaire passed away from a painful illness, and even in his final moments he struggled with the consequences of his arrogance. Ironically, his home in Geneva, Switzerland, was later used to store and distribute Bibles, a stark reminder that no matter how loudly we deny the sacred, it will endure long after we're gone. Voltaire's name became synonymous with mocking the divine, yet history's irony is cruel, for it is the Bible that outlasted him, while his own words faded into obscurity. His life is a warning. To mock God is not just to face immediate scorn, but to become a mere footnote in the face of truth that transcends time. But while Voltaire's arrogance was swallowed by history, the next man's rebellion against the sacred would cost him not just his legacy, but his soul. Number 14. Aleister Crowley. Known as the wickedest man in the world, Aleister Crowley made himself a name as the leader of a new wave of occultism. He proudly mocked Christianity, declaring himself as a prophet, and created his own belief system, one that openly defied God's laws. His life became a series of indulgences, drugs, magic, and hedonism. Crowley was relentless in his rejection of faith, using his influence to pull others into his dark teachings. But the more he sought to play God, the more he became consumed by his own demons. Financial ruin, addiction, and social exile marked the last years of his life. He died in 1947, alone and destitute, his legacy forever stained by the arrogance with which he sought to overthrow the divine. Even the cult of followers he created began to crumble under the weight of his contradictions. Crowley's fate is sealed as a parable. No one who dares to mock God, to claim dominion over what is sacred, ever escapes the justice of the universe. If his fall from grace was swift, the next tale shows that even those who try to deny truth through words and philosophy cannot avoid their reckoning.
Number 15. Jim Morrison, the Lizard King, a name that conjures visions of rebellion and excess. Jim Morrison, frontman of The Doors, reveled in his power to shock and provoke. His music was filled with cryptic lyrics, often mocking sacred traditions and embracing dark philosophies. Morrison was intoxicated not only by alcohol and drugs, but by the belief that he could transcend the limitations of faith and morality. He publicly scorned religion, rejecting Christianity and embracing his own brand of chaotic spirituality. But what followed was the inevitable price of arrogance. In 1971, at just 27, Morrison was found dead in a Paris apartment, his life, just like his music, ending abruptly in an overdose. His youthful rebellion became a tragic symbol of the cost of mocking the sacred. Jim Morrison's legacy became a part of the tragic 27 Club, a reminder that pride and excess
never go unpunished. His death serves as a chilling warning. No matter how much the world admires you, there is no escape from the consequences of your defiance. And if Morrison's premature death shocked fans, the next story shows how pride in the pursuit of pleasure can carry a similar fate, but on a much larger stage. Number 16. Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio was once the face of Hollywood, an icon, a symbol of beauty, wealth, and success. But in the midst of his fame, he became the poster child for excess. Known for his numerous relationships, lavish lifestyle, and the constant flaunting of his power and influence, DiCaprio mocked restraint, morality, and at times even faith. He often derided religion in interviews, positioning himself as a champion of causes like environmentalism, while turning a blind eye to his own contradictions: private jets, yachts, and parties with the very billionaires he claimed to fight against. His hypocrisy became a dark stain on his public image, yet his troubles grew. Lawsuits, scandals, and accusations of sexual misconduct mounted. Each new controversy chipped away at the mask of perfection he wore for years. DiCaprio's story is one of a man who thought his fame could shield him from the judgment of a higher power. But when the smoke cleared, the real cost of his arrogance became undeniable. For even in the world of luxury, the truth remains: no one escapes the consequences of mocking the sacred. And if DiCaprio's premature death shocked fans, the next story shows how pride in the pursuit of pleasure can carry a similar fate, but on a much larger stage. The stories you've heard today are not just tales from the past. They are warnings, echoes of a truth too many refuse to acknowledge. The downfall of these 16 figures is more than a series of unfortunate events. It is a reflection of divine justice that cannot be avoided, no matter how high you climb or how loud you shout your defiance. But as we close this chapter, there is one final question that remains unanswered, one that haunts every soul who dares to mock the sacred. Is it too late for redemption? Or do the consequences of such arrogance seal our fate forever? There are still lives unfolding, stories yet to be written, and some of the most powerful and influential figures of today continue to walk a path of pride, refusing to heed the warnings that have come before them. What will happen to them? Will they too face the consequences of defying the divine? This isn't the end. It's only the beginning, and the clock is ticking.